Welcome to the Los Angeles Tribune page. Here you will find original news programming, exclusive digital events, and shows that are directly from the community. At the Los Angeles Tribune, we believe in giving a voice to the voiceless. We are proud to be the only national brand to empower everyday people to make a difference. Since 1886, our reputation has been built on truth and responsibility. Thank you for watching and making a difference.
For general inquiries, contact today. Thank you on behalf of the Los Angeles Tribune team.
I am on mute while I'm saying we're live. So here we are, live and real. I'm going to show you one other thing, hopefully. Yes, today is the beginning of a segment or an episode that I will have every other month. And you can obviously also submit some ideas for this. Today, I want to lay the groundwork a little bit for what we're going to talk about because, good morning, Denise, because what we're going to talk about today might ruffle some feathers, and that's okay. As you all know, I'm not just a mentor, speaker, and all of that. I'm also a historian by training. As historians, we do believe in as much as possible looking at the facts and as objectively as possible to interpret the facts. But there is that little word, interpret. A very smart person one time said that a historian's mind is like a courtroom. So that's me. That's why I keep always asking questions when things come up in shows. And hi, Shmiko. And that's probably why I can dig so deep. Today, we are looking at a somewhat contentious issue, but I want to lay the groundwork by just pointing out what I am focused on and my two guests who are very brave to come on the air. We're looking at social movements, most of all. Social movements. A social movement usually is defined as a loosely organized campaign. They have a social goal. They usually have similar ideas, similar philosophies. And very often, we're looking at those in a variety of ways. You've all heard, of course, of reform movements. You've heard of revolutionary movements, reactionary movements, self-help movements, religious movements, a whole range of things. And sometimes we may not be exactly sure what we are witnessing or what we are part of. So wherever you lay on this big spectrum, today we're going to focus on woman, life, freedom. Contentious already, I know. I also want to right away bring up two amazing ladies. And before we jump into the whole idea of this social movement, they brought something to my attention that years ago I was aware of. But you know how it is. Sometimes we just keep moving. We keep moving, and we may not pay 100% attention. So I'm going to share an image with you, and then I'm going to bring these two ladies in. And yes, that was me not saying anything. And here we have Jasmine A and Suzanne B. And that's how we're going to keep it. Just so that you know, that's how we're going to keep it, because we never know what's going to happen or what may not happen. Suzanne, can you say something briefly before we jump in all of the other issues about the image that I just shared?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Natalie. First of all, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to be here and to talk about this movement and right now about this, the image you put on. Today actually is the 1000th day after um, the, the unfortunate event that we had on January 8, 2020. That was about shooting down an airplane in Iran, PS 752. And that airplane just took off from Iran with a lot of talented Iranian people came back from vacation because it was a Christmas holiday. They went to see their families. We had newlywed couple. They celebrated their marriage with their family. They're all talented, most of them either PhD or above PhD students. They were coming back to their hometown to go to the school and do that. But within maybe less than a minute or so, just the plane shot by their own country's government. And basically they all died in a second, which today is the 1000. Sorry, I became a bit emotional, but it's just like it was very tough. It was so tough event, and right now we know the people, they lost their wives, their children, their sons, their all relatives. They stayed here in other countries without them, and they have to move the life without them. That was the tragedy, like tragedy that we could not even imagine. And how much hope, how much talent. And those people, they could actually make life, the world, a better place for everyone to live, because they were all had such a good brain. They could bring so much improvement to this world, but they had to die just because they announced it as a mistake. But how that can, a mistake can happen like that? And the thing is, it was not announced first that it was. So first it was announced that it was an accident. And then by push of the media and everyone, they had to accept, yes, government did it, but it was a mistake. Was any justice for it? No. So that's what right now today I want like have maybe 30-second just silence just to respect those people.
Thank you.
So now, yes, Yasmin, would you like to add something that maybe I missed?
No, I was just going to say a lot of Iranian Canadians could empathize, and it was really a shock for all of us because it could have been any of us who are now alive on that plane. So that's why it was very tough for the Iranian community to go through that.
Thank you. And thank you also for bringing that back to our minds. It's not easy to then switch topics or switch the focus a little bit, but that's why we're here, topics of the day. And I want to start out by acknowledging that the current government of Iran, which is at the center of today's show, did make a statement that whatever may or may not be happening right now in Iran is due to the acts of outsiders, especially the US and Israel. Um, and so I want to acknowledge that. That is their point of view. I also want to just briefly, can't help myself, I'm a historian, okay, acknowledge the important history of Iran. Iran has a very rich history. It is in the area where many believe civilization was born. Iran, Iraq, the idea of Persia years and years ago, before it started to separate and become their own countries with their own rich culture. But there is a lot of history, there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of education, there are a lot of achievements in the area of Iran and surrounding areas. I mean, we're talking way ahead of the game in many instances. And of course, most of us probably are also aware that there was a revolution. Some of us are too young to remember it, some of us are not. But there was what is considered the Iranian Revolution in 1978. And that was, of course, when the former Shah was debunked, was forced to leave. And since then, the history and the organization of the country of Iran has changed. But I want to make sure that we appreciate all that Iran has given to the world as well, because there is a lot and there still continues to be a lot. And I think it was Yasmin yesterday when we briefly talked who also pointed out to me how many educated men and women there are. So this is a very intellectually rich country. I want to just point that out because at one point I want to go and visit because it's history and it's archaeology. So that's the backdrop of what we're talking about. And then, of course, we know at this point that there are a lot of protests. Mm-hmm. And this is why I had long conversations with Susan and Jasmine, whether they really wanted to come on the show with their faces, because there might possibly be some issues with that. Yasmin, you're a little younger. Can you just tell us a little bit, not in too much detail, about yourself and what you think is happening right now in Iran?
Of course. I moved to Canada with my family around 10 years ago, and I basically studied here in a Canadian university. I am working right now in a Canadian company. So I call Canada home now, even though I grew up in Iran for 11, 12 years before that. And basically, I want to say when I first came here in high school, there weren't a lot of Iranians around me, so I wasn't involved in the community. However, when I moved to university, there was a lot of Iranian Canadians and Iranians who just came from Iran. And I was involved in the community and our association at the time. And there's been a series of protests happening every once in a while in Iran. And it's really due to the oppression and the violence of human rights in Iran. But this time around, it's become a lot bigger, I think mostly because of Mahsa Amini. She was a 22 years old girl who was basically beaten to death by what we call the Revolutionary Guards or the morality police. I remember them from when I used to be in Iran. They come in vans and stop by streets and they check out women and evaluate your hijab. So they basically did that to Mahsa, took her into the van, and she was taken into a station to receive a lecture on how to properly wear her hijab. And a few hours later, they call her parents and say she's in a hospital. She goes into a coma and dies afterwards. Usually families get threatened to stay quiet, but in this case, they didn't stay quiet. And that's why it blew up and led into all the series of events that we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And I have to point out that you just mentioned she got beat. And I personally don't have any evidence for that.
Mhm.
So as far as we know, she may or may not have eaten. But what we do know is that she died shortly thereafter, and that there are some injuries that we can't explain.
Yeah,
So,
there was there's an anonymous hacker group that has been hacking into Iran's government system, and
mhm,
there were some MRI scans that got leaked, and a lot of
mhm.
health professionals say that it shows blunt force trauma. That's why a lot of Iranians do believe that that might have happened, but yeah, it wasn't acknowledged, obviously.
Obviously, yes. And of course, as we talked yesterday briefly preparing for the show,
Mhm.
just to make sure that everybody
Yes.
was okay with the show, it is important to know that you are currently not in Iran.
Mhm.
Okay. So we're talking here, obviously, from a little bit of a distance.
Mhm.
We're not on the streets. And as we all know, I hope you know, the government, when I say they, I should be precise, the government did try to completely shut down the internet. If you see on Twitter, Instagram, etc., movies, recordings of what seems to be happening in Iran, please know that those people are risking their lives. They can be incarcerated, and who knows what happens after that. So we are a little bit at a safe distance, while at the same time, we can obviously support. And Yasmin was just pointing out how much she was involved all of her young life in, supporting Iranian culture, government, ideas, however we want to put that. Susan, you are, may I say, a tiny bit older than Jasmine. More
A
about my
lot
age.
older. I
So
can
tell
be
us,
Yasmin's mom, so
yeah,
I had that.
tell us a little bit about you. Why do you care about this issue?
Okay, so I came here a long time ago. So as Yasmin said, Canada is my home. Um, and I consider myself a very fortunate, lucky person that could have Canada as a home, choose Canada as a home. And I consider myself as a successful woman in life, and I contribute that a lot to the opportunity I was given by this country,
Mhm.
and the freedom that I have to move. So the reason I care, because I've been in the time that there was a lot of pressure of women, even more than that. The time that I went to university, that time, um, it was a lot of pressure. So, like for example, I had allergy to sun, and I had to wear sunglasses, but I was not allowed because sunglasses was symbol of West. So I could not. My eyes were always red, and I could not choose. So that was at things like that. So sometimes when I see how much freedom I have here, and every day I have it, I got used to those freedom, and I kind of take it as granted. I go back and look at what happened before to me. I see, wow, look, I'm fortunate here. I have freedom, but I could be a mom of any of those girls or boys on the street right now. I could be a mom of one of the brightest students that got shot 2 days ago in Sharif University. I could be a mom there. And that makes me uh, so caring about this. And I wanted to be their voice. I want to be their mom's voice, parents' voice.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you, Susan. And let's talk for a moment. I don't want to forget the young lady, but I don't want to focus on her because it seems that this time the protests go deeper.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take a cue from you, Susan, because you just mentioned Sharif University. Sharif University, but I believe also other universities, and I believe, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Azad University, and many others have been facing in the last 2-3 days. Um, uh, the seizure, I'm trying to find the right words, the seizure by the so-called security forces up to where shots are being fired, as far as we know. And I'm gathering my information, just full disclosure, from a number of news organizations. I don't just believe Twitter or Instagram, but a number of news organizations from around the world, including some in the Arab world. So it is not that I'm only looking at US or German or anything like that. So apparently there's a lot going on at the universities, so much so that, if I'm understanding this correctly, as of today, a number of universities and schools are not having sessions, courses, classes, and that even the instructors, professors are saying we're not going to teach until our students are back free, healthy, etc. Tell us about that, because here we're talking about the best and the brightest. What's going on there as far as you know?
Okay, so you basically said all in a nutshell. Yes, that's what is going on right now, and this movement is different. Like everyone, as you mentioned at the beginning, Iran has a rich history. We have been through a lot of up and down during the history, and we know that. So what it is as a human brain, we don't forget. Like history stays, and the more history you have, the society has more memory, and it goes back and goes back. So what is different about this movement? So this is something that I kind of studied, because even for me was a bit shocked that why this movement led by young generation. And what is going on? I'm not saying, yes, it has started with Mahsa Amini, but Mahsa Amini was just igniting the fire. So there is just like a tip of iceberg. A lot going on down there. And it happened, yes, with the women, but it's not all about the women. We have women, we have girls and boys right now beside each other, supporting each other. So why is movement is different? Because this generation, our Gen Z generation, they are super talented, super smart people. And what they know, they self-aware, they have confidence, they have goal. And what is the goal of this movement? They want freedom. And the other thing is very interesting. They don't have a leader. They actually have no actual leader. And everyone is surprised that how this movement is moving in a right way, in fast speed, even without having a established, organized leadership. This is what these kids, and now we see, yes, the university, they shut down the university, they attack the universities, and these are the people age 20 above. And the day after, we saw, and instead of we see more mature people come to street. We see the high school people, they come to street. So this movement actually going down instead of going up. So we do have these kids. So I call this generation, A, they are brave. 2, they're self-aware. 3, they're confident. 4, they have goal. They want freedom. They're not afraid of anything. And they say something and they move until to get whatever they want. And I think that's all I can say in a complete, not much taking a lot of your time, but in summary, that's what's going on right now.
And so you mentioned it sort of like goes down in the age groups, right? At the same time, though, and I think, Yasmin, you also pointed this out to me, and I've seen on a number of reports that once the shooting and other instances occurred at the university, parents, older generations, also drove up to the university and stopped the security forces from coming out. So it seems to be like all ages. Am I getting this right, Jasmine?
Yes, that is correct. It's just too heartbreaking to watch. So I believe that a lot of people, once they saw that and their blood was boiling, they were baffled. So they got on the streets, and they don't want to lose their younger generation, obviously. And Sharif University videos really sparked this. I think one of the reasons why is because it's very famous for its engineering program. So these people, like we have an alumni, Maryam Mirza Khani, who basically won an equivalent of a math Nobel Prize. She was an alumni from this university. In the Canadian university that I was, most of the PhD students that I saw, the international Iranian students, were from that university. So I guess when people heard the news, even with the limited internet access, I don't know how fast this is moving around, but
Right.
everyone drove. I could imagine that if my parents were there, they would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
I've also seen videos of university professors who got stuck, and they would just shield the students in front of the guards. They're protecting the future of Iran. So,
Okay, so now let's dive into it. All started in a sense, but it seems to me that the incident that some people get focused on with this young lady was sort of just the trigger, was sort of just the last little water drop that brought it all to really explode, literally explode. Okay, so how can we understand this? And what I mean is, there are obviously, and we can talk about this too, there are also pro-government protests. And I have also seen interviews with women from Iran who are wearing the scarf. I'm going to just call it the scarf right now. And when I look at it, I'm thinking maybe that's not quite accurate either, but they're on national and international TV and they're saying, you know, I don't quite understand this, etc., etc. So how can we understand this bubbling up all of a sudden? And then on the other hand, some people clearly saying, for whatever reason, that things are just fantastic and the protesters are just rioters.
I can go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Add more afterwards. From personal experience, and I'll add more on just based on facts as well. From personal experience, I've seen these things happen back home where out of nowhere, you see these groups appear. I've heard stories from my mom when she used to go to university, and they would bring in a speaker who would be speaking for human rights freedom, and there would be a truckload of female guards because it was an all-female university. And then my mom knew the students on campus, and she said she didn't recognize any of them. So the government does do a mediocre job, I would like to say, of trying to use propaganda. Basically, is what I like to call it as. They do bring in people. They do bring in people who get paid, or even there are still a lot of families in Iran who are on the government side, I would like to say, either because they benefit or because they've grown up in that environment and they can't really see outside of Iran what is their rights, what they're missing out on, and it's just sort of, you know, that one view. I can say that because I used to be in that kind of box. And now that I'm outside looking back, I can see why. And the national TV of Iran is quite interesting. There's been instances where people have picked out Photoshop and even photos getting, like, you see one person duplicated on this side of the image and then on another side of the image. So they do really try hard to show this image to the world that, you know, we're united, we hate the West. Even as an elementary school student, I have memories of our teachers taking us into the backyard of the school and telling us to use chants like "Deaf to America," "Deaf to Israel," even though like I was 8 years old, I didn't even understand any of these things.
Right.
The way they set up the system is that's how they, I would like to say, brainwash you. But this new generation is not having it. I think a big reason why is social media. They see on social media how other people live,
Right.
what the standard of living is, and they compare and they realize I deserve better. So that's what I like to say.
Okay. Suzanne, what are your thoughts?
I agree with her. I totally agree with her because I was a student in university. I went there, and the time we went, as her mom said, in that time we were really, really under tight regulation. So yes, I agree with her. That's exactly what it is. I think one of the reasons the new generation became like that because they were brought up by the parents, specifically mothers, that they went through to a lot of them. They are educated, highly post-secondary education. Most of them are about 60, if I can say data, about 60% of Iranian women, they have post-secondary degree or master degree. And so they brought up by those women that at that time they went to university and they were under so much tight regulation and tight restriction, I can say restriction, that probably transferred to the new generation. So the new generation, they are smart because they were brought up by most educated generation of moms in history. A lot of Iranian women, they actually spend a lot of time on the children education. So they got exposed to the internet. They see what's going on outside and why they're not hit. And then they come to the point that these are our basic human rights. And a lot of, like, whoever right now in protesting, they're not saying we don't want you to have hijab. We just, they say we want to have a freedom of choice. Like what happened here in Canada, in US, we all live together very nicely. Whoever wants to have hijab, yes, we respect. And whoever doesn't want to have hijab, respect. So it comes that they came to this conclusion that we want a choice. Give us choice, not force. Nothing will be done with force. So a lot of this right now is just because of force. And what government shows, it want to show that no majority are like that. That's not the right image, as much as we know. And a lot of the Iranian people, they live in like two image, like they have private lives and they have public lives. So in private lives, they all dress the way that they want it. They come to the street, which is not the right thing because it affects their personality after a while. You become dual personality. You don't know what to choose. But that's how it is in Iran. So in my generation, they were told us, you have to have hijab. If you don't want, leave the country. And that's what we did. A lot of us, we did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But this generation, they tell them, if you don't want it, leave. And what they say, here is my home. I want to stay here and I want to have freedom. So that's the difference between them and us. And I can admit, our generation, we were not brave enough. We left. We said, okay, we leave Iran. We go somewhere we can have experience. We experience freedom. But these people, they said, we want to stay and experience freedom. That's a difference.
Yes, that's very powerful. And Jasmine, I'll let you jump in a second. I just want to acknowledge Kwan Yan and also Mohammed Ahmed, who is very active. So thank you for that, Mohammed. And I appreciate your activity. And anybody, if you have questions or comments, also for especially these two ladies, because they're the experts, please also put them in. Just to add to what Jasmine probably is going to say, even though I'm not a mind reader, I do want to just briefly share another image. And this actually comes from The Guardian. Okay.
Mhm.
And this is an image from last night at Sharif University. It's obviously not very clear, but I think we can all see some motorbikes and some people running away. So that is what we're seeing right now through channels that are officially closed, but we're still getting these images. And as Susan was just saying, apparently the young ones, and especially, of course, the educators, they're not going to go and just leave quietly. So without any further ado, Jasmine, what were you going to add before I interrupted?
No worries. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine, a guy friend of mine who I stayed close with ever since even I left Iran. And I keep in touch with him, and he was planning on leaving the country before all this started. And I was talking to him about the movement, and he was saying, yeah, it's very scary. Some people are helping out, some people are not helping out. And then he told me that I want to stay now. I have canceled my plans to immigrate. And I asked him why, because I was just surprised, because this person was asking me questions, and he exactly said what Suzanne said. He said, this is my country. Now that I'm seeing this fight, I want to join in. When Suzanne said that, I just remembered his face. And I wanted to say I heard that from a very close friend, and it was an interesting experience hearing that, and me on the outside. I kind of felt like I want to be there with him and my other friends, but yeah, just wanted to add that.
So are you worried about his safety?
Of course, I am worried about his safety and all of the other people who are around. Even though he said that he doesn't directly go on the street, I have heard of relatives going out and then seeing red laser lights that come from guns targeted on their bodies and being screamed at by the guards, even if they're wearing a hijab and they're just going on a quick walk to run an errand. That's what I heard from a cousin, and she has a really young daughter who got very scared and panicked. So it's pretty scary, I'm not gonna lie. Having seen how bad it can get firsthand, the Revolutionary Guards are not scared of anything. So yeah, that's the main reason why the internet is shut down, for them to get away with their crimes. So.
Yes. And of course, that relates back to how we started the show. Just a reminder that there was an airplane that, as was later admitted, was shut down. So when you're saying crimes, you do have a reason to call it that. It's not just that you're putting it like that. So we do have some evidence. This may be a strange question, but you talked just about the Revolutionary Guard. We've also talked about the morality police a little bit. You mentioned them. I recently found an interview with people who serve in the morality. Is that what it's called? The morality police. And they actually talked about how if they don't catch sufficient women, that they are in trouble. So part of the question to me is, and this may also come from experience in history in Germany and so forth, what if there was no pressure on these morality police officers, female and male. And my understanding is there's always 4 males and 2 females. What if there was no pressure? What if there was no pressure on the Revolutionary Guard? Would it switch, do you think? Or can we even blame them by wanting to stay alive? I don't know. It seems to be a tricky moral issue. What are your thoughts on that? Because I've been trying to figure it out. What would I do if, right? And it also brings back the conversation that we had, whether you two are going to be live on camera or not, right? And I know there are plenty of others who are, but it's always one of my concerns because you don't know what's going to happen. So are you brave enough or crazy enough, to just tell your security staff officer, no, I'm not doing that? Or what are the consequences? What are your thoughts on the dilemma that, as you ladies just put it, the mask wearing sort of, and this way there, this way at home? What are the dilemmas that we're facing when it comes to this movement even growing bigger and bigger? Oops.
I think a big part of it depends on your upbringing as well. Okay. Whether in the way you were growing up with your parents, whether your parents encouraged you to make decisions for yourself, what sort of morals you grew up with. I mostly spent time with my mom's side of families and relatives, and my grandpa was actually a military man for the Shah. So they were more on the progressive side. We didn't wear hijab when we hang out. We had our, private sides that was very different.
Right.
So I grew up with those sorts of moral sets, whereas I, for a fact, have known friends, and I do remember them from school that grew up in a different environment. I remember they would even believe in conspiracy theories of, the American dollar has the signs of the devil on the bill, and things that she would bring up to me and be like, where are you hearing these from? And it's just the way it is when you live in a single country all of your life and you haven't traveled around. Like my parents actually moved to a country in Europe when I was born, and they lived there for 4 or 5 years. And that's when they saw, because my dad was there on a scholarship, he basically had to interact with the people of the embassy, which are officials, obviously. And my parents got to know that the students who worked in the embassy got paid a lot more than my dad did. That definitely got treated differently. And that even though they would wear their hijab, like my mom was a tutor for one of their children. And they would say all these things of, yeah, my kid has just done her prayer. But then my mom, who was a tutor, would see the same kid go out with her boyfriend and do whatever they want.
Okay, yeah. Well, kids will be kids, right?
Exactly. But it's just, that's when my parents saw the truth for themselves. They lived through the revolution. My dad was forced to go as a soldier and fight for this regime. So this was their first time seeing everything. And when they tell me stories of it, obviously they got shocked, but not a lot of people get to see that side. Right. And depending on what kind of environment you grow up in, so that was the kind of environment I grew up in. I heard these stories. I grew up with these stories. As Suzanne said, my brilliant mom always, telling me all these stories. You get to know the two-faced side. And when you know the history of 40 years of this happening over and over and again, you kind of have enough of it. So there are people who are brave enough, or I like that you said crazy enough, because they are crazy. They're putting their lives at risk to go out.
But crazy in a good way, that's like,
yeah, exactly. Like I when the Green movement was happening, when I was back in Iran, my dad and I went on a protest, and it was funny because my dad's voice was gone the next day, and he was a university staff basically, and they made a joke, a threatening joke, that, oh, your voice is gone, I wonder what you were up to last night.
Yeah.
So I guess it really it's also because the standard of life has gone so low, Natalie, that I know my generation, the economy is so bad that they don't even have the money to buy a ring to propose to their loved ones. But when life is so dire, you want to do anything to live any other life but this. That's
Right.
why I see a bigger percentage of people being brave and crazy this time around. And at the same time, I kind of understand why some of those people choose to stay. Maybe they're holding back their families, they're threatened.
Right.
I don't know how exactly this happens, but we do have a lot of people who also switch around. Like there's an officer who is actually posting a lot of information, a lot of videos on how to combat these Revolutionary Guards. He's switched over, and now he's basically posting videos, helpful videos of insider tips on how to keep the protests going. But
Yeah.
at least that's what I see from the side that likes to go on the fight. It's hard to know what goes on in these people's heads. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, because it is I'm always trying to understand everybody. Doesn't mean I always do, but at least try. And it is hard because we're so easy to judge and to say, well, why did you leave? Why did you stay? Why didn't you do this? And there are lots of different consequences we sometimes have to consider. You just mentioned the economy. And theoretically speaking, Iran is a very rich country. I mean, it does have gas, oil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the landscape. There could be lots of tourism when I just look at videos of the landscape. My understanding, and this might be outdated, is that the average salary currently is about $315 a month. So, if it's somewhere in that vicinity, does that automatically mean that prices are so much lower than where we're living? I don't know exactly how you can pay rent and food for $350 a month. Suzanne?
If you don't mind, I answer that question because actually I was in Iran not long ago. So very, very new, freshly. Yes. So what you exactly said, that Iran is a rich country. We have oil, we have minerals, we have a lot of so if we put everything aside and we just focus on tourism, that could actually bring so much money to the country. Because right now, when I went there, I was shocked. The way that everything presented, the most beautiful way they present everything. The hospitality is number one. They turned all those historical houses, like I can say 500, 6 years ago, 100 years ago, they renovated them. And they, right now, they use it as the tourist attraction. But there is not much tourist. So everything over there is just beautiful. Like even like a water bottle, it look different because they're very innovative, they're very talented, but talent and everything over there is stayed. It doesn't turn on to money. So that's why a lot of people, they live under poverty line. So what you see for the average salary, yes, that's what it is, but not the prices. The price is almost as $1.
Wow.
If you go there, you almost spend money. I can say like just going outside. I mean, a lot of people, they still go out, but it's just those specific, like maybe 20% of the population. It's not just majority. So the majority, they have to be smart and somehow live somehow. So sometimes you don't even know how. That's why what I actually observed, my observation was the new generation, what it is, the most of them educated, most of them. So I can say the new generation, boys and girls, I can say maybe above 80% are highly educated. There's no job. Like honestly, they have those talents, they have education, but there's no hope. They all say, okay, yeah, we got got for until here. So I was actually talking to someone who is in IT, and he was saying that I don't even know what I want to do because my profession is all about is dependent on internet. And if one day they decide they don't want internet, I'm gone. So it's just you don't see the light in the end of the tunnel. Like you don't have like a new generation has no hope, nothing to look forward. And that is missing. Other than everything we talk, they're brave, they're intelligent, they're innovative, they have everything. But what is missing, there's no hope because the economy is so low, is bad. People, they live in poverty and they can't, they hardly survive. That's basically, that's what it is. And if you were in somewhere that you didn't have resources around you and you don't understand, yes, you do have these resources and these resources can turn to money and makes everyone's life so much easier, you may not understood. But when you go there and you see, wow, the resources are not used properly, this one can generate money and people, they can live better. That's how they feel.
So I want to bring it back to the idea of the social movement. Okay. First of all, thank you both for everything that you shared, because all of those different aspects I think are really, really important. When we're talking about a social movement, like I said in the beginning, we can talk about how they develop, how they go. Iran has seen different movements as well, just like many other countries. However, right now it appears to almost be, to use that old term, like a powder keg, where all of the issues come together. When I first heard of what was happening in Sharif and Azad and other universities, couldn't help myself but think about the Kent shooting in the United States, which was also a university, May 4th, 1970. And then I'm thinking, okay, let's imagine today in the United States, in Germany, in Spain, if one of the best universities in these countries were suddenly under attack, if there was shooting, and not from one person going in and shooting everybody, but if it was more like a government approach, what would we do? How would we react? I'm a mom, so I'm with Susan, right? I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. I also have a daughter, so of course I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. And there are things like this happening all over the world. I did get a question when preparing about, well, why do I want to talk about Iran and not Afghanistan? Well, I can talk about Afghanistan too, just can't put it all into one show. And it's a little bit different. This social movement right now, and I'm going to say it's a social movement in Iran, is different because it's not like previous ones where it's in some major cities or it's only at the universities, but it appears to be in a variety of different locations, big cities, small cities, universities, corner stores. It seems to be everywhere. And a lot of men, heads up to Mohammed, seem to also be supporting this. So it's not just women doing this. It is men and women coming together, especially, obviously, the younger generation, the best and the brightest, who have seen more, who have been exposed to more. So this seems to be a real challenge this time, which has me wonder what's going to happen next. And it's a two-edged question for both of you. I'm going to give you the spotlight for just a moment. And the two-edged question is, what is your worst fear? What can happen? Because we already hear some of the rhetoric ratcheting up. And what is your best hope for what is going to happen? And just for age's sake, I'm going to go with Suzanne first. Okay. So Susan, what are your thoughts on that question, those two questions?
Okay. As you mentioned, this is a social movement. Okay. And I think this movement has so much depth into it, because when it goes back, yes, it has started with human right, women's right, but in Iran right now, people, they started with slogan "Women like freedom," but they didn't stop that. After that, they say men, country, development. So they know men and women, they have to be together. So this is not a feminist movement. It started with women, but we go along together. That's a big thing. So it's very deep. Is what is different is it has a goal, which is freedom. Is the other thing is a lot of people involved in it. They are either they are highly educated, writers, poets, artists, and the way that they act so quickly because they bring their talent to the table. So within a week, a song came up that for sake of, and someone just put all those little tweets for sake of, and now that became a movement song. And unfortunately, the singer right now is in jail because a day after this song came up, they captured him. So what I see here, I see a lot of deep cognitive, intellectual, artists, everything together. This is not a shallow movement. We're talking about 43 years of pressure, and all of a sudden is a huge, it burst, and this is a right one, is with all those aspects of have, and it's so focused. That's the other thing. It's not just, even though this movement doesn't have a specific leader, but it's going to a very focused way because everyone wants freedom. That's what it is. And my hope is it gets to the point that people, they get freedom, they what they want, and my worst hope is if we don't speak up and if we stay silent, whoever right now is in prison and whoever died, they just everything is going to vanish from the history. So people, they forget. That's why we need to go forward. There is no way to go back. It is too late to go back.
Oh, it's too late to go back. Okay, I want to put that in the comments in a second. Thank you for that. And you said it started obviously with woman, life, freedom, and then what was added to it? Men?
So the moment this came up as a slogan, a few days after, the women actually came up with something else, and they said "men, country, development." If I actually translated right from Farsi to English, because they wanted to say, yes, we started as a women, but we are not alone. We cannot have anything without support of our men. So we are together. That's how they came up. This is not, yes, a lot of people, they call it feminist movement, but it's not only feminist. It's everyone. And as you said, it's global, it's in all the countries. And we all want one thing, freedom, and we are all united. So that is different than every other movement.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that, Susan. Okay, Jasmine, it's all yours. Worst fear and best hope.
No worries. Worst fear is exactly what Suzanne said. When the revolution happened, it wasn't just the Muslim group that was protesting against the Shah. There was a lot of other groups with different views and perspectives, and the group that has taken over now basically massacred the opposition parties and took over. We've seen in history that they're not scared of executing large populations of their oppositions. So My worst fear is that happening again. And this time, perhaps it would be the largest number they've killed. As Suzanne said, all the people who are in jail will immediately be, if they haven't been already executed, they would probably try to imprison even more people. So I can't imagine Iran going that way. My hope would be for this regime to fall down and hopefully the right government to take over. My best hope, sort of like imaginary vision, would be for a female-focused government to take over, which I'm not sure if is that possible considering what's happening. But that would be my best hope, because I see the most success in governments that have more female politicians around the world. But yeah, I also wanted to add, for anyone who's interested to listen to the song that Suzanne mentioned, it's in Farsi, for the sake of, is Baraye. So it's Baraye by Shervin Hajipur. Spotify actually just added it to his profile as well. I've been listening to it, so if you're interested, that's the song.
Awesome. And I'm going to ask you that once we're done, maybe you can actually put it in the comments under the video on Facebook. So we're going to hope for the best. What else can we do if we were able to do a call to action? I think what I'm hearing you say is keep paying attention. You know, some people will take more action than others. However, it seems to me that what you're saying is, let's keep, I don't want to say the pressure on, but let's keep watching what's happening. Let's keep recording what's happening. Is there anything else that people can do right now? Because I mean, even when we talked, I was like, well, there's not much I can do, but we can at least talk about it and make sure that people understand what is happening. Even though the internet is down, even though there are accusations about conspiracies and all that, we do see videos of people being shot, people being hit, the lasers from the guns. We do see that. And this is not the only country, but right now this is a focal point. So what would you like people to do?
I can go ahead.
What do you want them to do? This is like you got a microphone in your ear somewhere, So good morning to California. Yes.
So I've had a lot of friends, actually, a lot of Iranian Canadian, well, I was going to say Canadian friends, excuse me, that appear Caucasian, Black, join me in protests. It's also, they also receive a lot of love from the Iranians. Like, I respect you, bro. Fist bump my friends. A lot of friends coming in, helping us joining protests. If that's not possible, there are petitions online. Amnesty has a petition calling for global action. There was a petition calling for action against government relatives who are staying here and seizing their properties in Canada and deporting them, which, by the way, did happen. They have sanctioned a list of organizations and specific people who work for the Revolutionary Guards are the heads. So these petitions do lead to actions. Even the social media hashtags, they sort of led the major phone companies in Canada, Rogers, TELUS, Kudos, Fido, all the Canadian phone companies, they started waiving off the fees to call Iran, which has helped my parents a lot with connecting to their family members. So this time it's working. I already am seeing this movement being successful. So petitions, keeping the online momentum going. If we lose this momentum, we can't lose this momentum. So anything in a way to contribute to this momentum will be helpful.
Yes, and you mentioned the protests, and there are worldwide protests.
Yes. So one last thing I want to say is there is an Grammy Academy Awards coming up for a song for social change. So if you go on the awards page, you can also submit Baraye by Shervin Hajipur as a candidate. Yeah.
Awesome. And you will provide us with the link. Yes. Awesome.
Good.
Thank you, Jasmine. Susan, anything else that you would want to add what people can do?
Okay, I just want to again thank you, Natalie, for giving us this opportunity, because this is one of the best opportunities we could actually get, and we just be the voice of those people that they cannot be heard. So I'm just gonna be you know what, my background is scientist, so I just go by point form. What we want, the call of action says, the momentum doesn't stop. So we have to spread the word. People, they have to hear the voice of people. The people and whoever is outside in right now out of Iran can be the voice of those people. This is one from the personal side. So whatever we can send the information, how we can share awareness. Awareness is the most important thing as a personal side. As a government side, please, all the governments in the world, don't feed this government with money or anything. This is not the government of choice. So please stop feeding them and think about how we can any strategy that maybe sanctions, because we already are so much sanctioned anyway, but any kind of sanction that can stop them of breaking the human rights and just force on people, killing people, anything can be happen. That's what we want, because right now people in Iran, they need help. They need support of everyone, because they're alone. They are alone inside, and unfortunately, they don't fight with other country. They fight inside. So, and that is the most, I can say, upsetting, because I mean, we know Ukrainian people, they're so brave. They actually go for their right, but they fight with another country. So what we have a group of young kids. They have no weapon. Their bare hands. The only thing they have is a brain and braveness, and they stand in front of a lot of armies. So this is so unfair fight. So that's all I can say. Don't add anything to the unfairness.
That's possibly a tough order. Well, and I'm saying that because we know there are lots of things that are interconnected. All right. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, Jasmine. Today, the topic was social movements, and we dug a lot deeper. So you are my inaugural guest for an episode that I'll have about every 2 months. But it is that something that we need to pay attention to, especially, and I want to point this out, neither one of you said, let's get rid of this or that, but both of you were saying tolerance. If you want to, in this instance, wear a scarf in a specific way, do it. If you don't, then don't. If you want to wear it halfway, that's fine. That's what we're talking about. We're not saying, only do this or only do that. And that's probably, in addition to all the other aspects that you mentioned, the power of this movement. And we're here to witness it and possibly support it. So thank you so much, ladies. Good luck. Thank you for being brave and somewhat crazy to come on with me. And everybody in the audience, thank you so much. Mohammed, Shmiko, Dr. Laura, Denise, thank you for being here. And hopefully you've learned a little bit. Up until next time. Bye.
Thank you for inviting us. Okay.